Good morning and welcome to the Education, Sport and Children's Services Committee, which has been conducted from the Chamber and remotely through Microsoft Teams. Translation facilities are available for this meeting. Please ensure that you have your headsets if required, which are available at the back of the Chamber. Please ensure your microphones are off, and before we begin, I would like to invite the Reverend Hugh Stewart to lead us in prayer. Thanks, Reverend.
Ie gras for agus ulivianich. Hashin son we got the water in een wash or some terhokeren. Agus some techain is grai gain. Tet de week feen cheerne eerste Christ. Mother guchtse an a la farabel uret de tachers. Gavelus a riolig. Agus gavel riolig on a grag agus on een troker. On a maïs agus gras. Bianig hashin je guye en hombeti show in een wash or. Gach baul agus gach teacher. Zoals kan een nule de clown week aan de schooltje fug skieren kunnen tussen gaan pianige gaan trorige kurtien ore agus we gaan misnachig aan me een noorde maar heen tot schachet van een teacher agus tro toch go proch na schooltje agus a Comhairle pianige ja dat je kuje pianige geen in aan het veen is ga Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Stewart. I just wanted to mention that at some point in the meeting there will be a group of S1 pupils from the Nicholson Institute coming in. So there'll be two groups actually. So they'll be coming and going out at various times. So it's just so you're aware of that. I'd also like to welcome Jonathan McKinnon, who's from Harris, who's here with legal for a week. So he's just sitting in on this meeting to see how we all operate. So you're beyond your best behaviour, all of you. Right. So before we start, I'd like to mention some good news to members before we move on. So Scolna Park have been awarded the Outer Hebrides Climate Hub's Climate Cup to recognise the school's contribution to climate action and sustainability. Park School will be attending the OHCOP2 later this month. Balavanik School has earned its 7th Eco Schools Green Flag Award, following a successful sustainability-focused improvement project that enhanced pupils' voice and outdoor learning. GL 6 to 7 pupils received the John Muir Trust Award for their contributions to climate action and conservation, which are now featured in a case study on the John Muir website. Supported by a Climate Hebrides Ideas into Action grant, the school developed wildlife-friendly and outdoor learning spaces, leading to their recognition with a Climate Cup. Gaelic Medium pupil M5 pupil Emma Macaulay won the school show race from the Red Card Scotland Creative Competition 2025. She travelled with her teacher and family to Hampden Park, where she won an opportunity for her and 6 friends to be mascots at a home Scotland match, as well as a tour of the Sky Sports TV studio. Dalborough School. The school achieved outstanding success at the local mod, with pupils excelling across a range of competitions and showcasing their talents in music and Gaelic language. Their performances reflected dedication, creativity, and a strong sense of cultural pride, earning praise from judges and the wider community and winning the Duash Nicola Cup. Stornoway Primary. Celebrating kindness at Stornoway Primary. We're thrilled to announce that our anti-bullying ambassadors have received the prestigious community badge from the Diana Award, recognising their outstanding work in promoting kindness, respect and inclusion. Through their kindness campaign, they inspired pupils, staff, families and the wider community to make kindness part of everyday life. Their leadership has truly transformed our school culture. We were especially proud when our local MP, Torquil Crichton, shared their message in Parliament, showing that even national leaders can learn from the children of Stornoway Primary. This reward is a remarkable achievement and we couldn't be prouder of our young leaders. Gilib and Chure. Stornoway Primary Gaelic Medium 7 pupils took part in the eSchool project Gilib and Chure, which was set up by Sheriff Colin Scott McKenzie. The project encourages Gaelic-speaking pupils to develop their language skills through a competition where they prepare a short speech on a topic of interest to them, along with taking part in a discussion with 2 assessors. We are pleased to announce that 3 of our pupils were successful in the community section. First place, Holly McRae, and joint 3rd place, Seamus Reid and Callan MacDonald. Thank you. So we'll move on to the meeting formal now. So please note that items 17 and 18 will be taken in private at the end of the meeting. I am ruling item 11 as urgent to allow that matter to be considered before the next meeting. And just a reminder that the meeting has been recorded and will be made available on the caller's website following the meeting. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairman. It's to do with item 18. I don't understand why this has been taken in private. I mean, there's no sums of money or anything else being referenced here. So.
Yeah, the reason for that is because of the commercial sensitivity. So contracts have been awarded, and so the obviously we can't be talking in public when we regarded customers or contractors who have got contracts with the caller. So that's the reason.
Well, yes, but I think that's. I won't say it's a flimsy excuse, but I don't think it's a commercial thing at all, because there's no names mentioned, there's no money mentioned, and I just wonder why this has been taken in private.
Yeah,
I think it's a public matter.
But as a council, you can bring that up in public. You can actually talk about that in the community. So within the, as I say, because of the commercial sensitivity, it's a standard practice that we do, and so it's not unusual. It's not something new. So yeah, okay, that's the reason. Yeah, okay. Apparently. So right. So we'll start with item 1, which is the minute of the meeting of the 17th of June 2025. Do members agree to note the minute? Approve the minute, sorry, Derek. What's that? Yeah. Okay. Item 2, declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items on the agenda. It would be helpful if members express why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Members in the meeting, please do so by pressing your microphone or remotely through Teams by using the raise hand function. Is anybody has any declaration of interest? No. Good. Right. So we'll move on to first item number 3, which is education from education provision, and that is ESCOL Annual Evidence of Impact Report 2024-2025. And this item informs members of the ESCOL impact during academic year 2024-2025. ESCOL continues to work closely with the Scottish Government to fulfil the 2021 manifesto commitment to establish a national digital academy. ESCOL continues to support all caller schools to broaden their curricular offer and ensure greater resilience during periods of staff absence. Mr. Stephen Graham will speak to the report and answer any questions. Thanks. Stephen.
Neachcarach mi tolis vidas cooleraf shownu gus ahisk iskol the third samari kishu op the iskol yent in the third shin you gopet coolery viltas na halapa gus buyan ala gus tilly chorum and a hort clanskala fagalapa. Ha viltas a gopet gus academy digitach nationta chruchig with the yawl party nationta na halapa as a manifesto akadash on the davile fichet sa hen. Agus a íscoil le colanic seo as léirhíoltais is sinne ar méineach go bliana gus projectan is cúisicin na chuide d'ard frá bhrátoch National E-Learning offer. A bhíoltas de bhéineach go bavis gan bhí fan fá fád malabe a gáil as live agus a sin is a fágal go bhfuil íscoil tónas asc a bhíoltas na bavis gan bhí agus sinne camal fistracha rí bhuina de fálam na halabe ag aman an sóhairit trúna bliana. Ha opad íscoil hadis an na blianachin a bhí jarabhig na corman na halaib fálam digitach ha fása de hín is grón a dhéna programman a gain san heachan sa hén a sinne tóisach ag tugus clasí an Gaelic go scoil an Canada. Agus a sin cúteach a clách teacher an Gaelic a féidir chail hadis gus clasí an Gaelic a teagus go sco an nalabe Stiakin as a wank, Stele, and in Canada Hain, had Jenna Shinkin. Chayahish Glional Hiskol, Shon of Leon da Villa Fichis a Coik, Hashin Skellig, St. Hogvius, agus a Kial Higerian in Brian Nash had Arpialu. So Shin Yoshu Emmerig na had a big goalache as gach program. Skujok Yoshu Jaravig the Vua Yashin the Hort at Skolchin, agus a Skoladan, if I galape. Chanye Vanshosne as Helen a Chefeg Neduche. Chayemmerige Hort ek Chonu, le Bailey Committee Hakon Yachai. Man ha íscola camal taicrí ardscoiltin inadal hadish the bliana chaisachat a seo as skíad ag an hín. S man a chaim sin fálam rí clásichan nu nach teacheran rian rimfan as na Helen ag an hín. Ha mi sin ga million note ag íscol hadish the bliana inavish da víle fichit sa céad, fichit sa cóig. Chai cor naich ciad míl nót ynne sin a chosk a seo as na Helen in year. Hadde siad na cóig bliana chaisachat, ha íscoil cor 10 million nót a hortesteach as ynne sin ha cor 1.5 million nót the chosk a seo as in úteras ac yn hín. Si issue as a cheru appendix man han aragad a sin a camal costnig rí mór an hitcharan agus locoproch feg na Helen ac yn. S man a sin a cútrí sin economy inatal. Spechulem tankert campaign ga officer in the corner agus campaign mar veil schon kutrich hadish de bliana chaisachat man a bege chole het taike chuder íscal ag gin gid horsach chavin seo inu ag gin sigah man a íscal camal taik skalchen agus íscala den camal henne de like in heen. Is je le tuigen asende het fade an aflan Gedig met de karme wie leib sin, sas ni nul konjochig ri bail parliament for partien, triffer partien at the shows studying na bliana at ze had de gopa den manifesto sak at horsach an tug an aflan. Agus gusjana keinchach gevelat in mochel in opa da sin gianu agus na karmen a hand gus fase hort et fallem ditcher. Mar sin am nul gengoshu ri sin aish agus fin gemat. Jonach an raste fragart hortka question to me get the gaviakuth kal ha navrain. So dabelef.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. Does anybody have any questions for Stephen at all? Okay, if there's no anybody. Who's it? Yeah. Oh, Councillor Macaulay, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. No member of your committee, and thank you very much for the very detailed report. And it's great to see how much money it is taken into the island. I was looking at 6.12, the social value engine, the calculation there for the amount of money invested and what it takes into the island. I couldn't actually find it on the social value engine itself. Is it possible to maybe send us it? Well, maybe it's there and I couldn't find it, but if it's not, could you perhaps send a copy to us all? Thanks very much.
Yeah, I'll certainly look to do that. The social value engine is a calculator that's used by Scottish Government themselves to accurately and transparently measure the social return on any investment. And 6.12 specifically talks about the work we're doing with interrupted learners. Now, the trajectory an interrupted learner is one towards no qualifications and very limited prospects, beyond school, not going on to a positive destination, likely becoming a recipient of benefits and agency support for the duration of their lives. So for the small amount of money that's invested, the social value engine calculates that as being a significant return. I think for every £1 that's invested over 3 years, the return is £107, and that equates to, £1.2 million is spent on our interrupted learners provision, and that equates, according to the social value engine, in a return of £45 million. Now, it seems significant. It seems almost too good to be true. But when you think of over the lifetime of somebody who is not earning, the cost to the economy and the cost to society is significant. So if we can intervene early and furnish a young person with qualifications and support them towards a sustained destination, working in partnership with their schools and other agencies, then that's a great success, not just for themselves, but for their family and for society at large. My understanding of the social value engine is that reports that we pay a subscription to be able to use it. I don't think that the reports that we run are public facing, but I'll certainly look to drill down and provide something for members so that they can have a more informed understanding of what lies behind each of these figures. But it's all based on academic research and proven measures and metrics that sit behind the figures that sit within the report.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Councillor Callum McLean. You're on, Callum.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Thanks. Red is on.
Lights on now.
Thanks for that. Thanks, Stephen, for a very detailed report. And it's a very good report, and especially when it comes to a skeptic. I once was a skeptic. I could say that for a few things. I once was. But I'd be quite honest, it's good to see the progress that has gone on in eSchool. And in particular, I was going to mention something to do with the social value. I don't think social value is to do with pounds, shillings and pence as much as the good, the social good that it's doing within the communities. And I'll give you an instance of that. Just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was on the mainland and I was talking to a parent from the mainland who had difficulty with her child. And she was looking forward. Actually, she did mention iSchool. And she was looking forward to her child getting some input of education, because this child had been without education for the last 3 or 4 years, interrupted, very, very interrupted. And it was good. She was looking forward to actually getting this for her and would give her a bit of stability in the family. So that is the good that is coming out of eSchool and iSchool in particular. The question I would like to ask, Stephen, is you mentioned in your report here, you've on one of your page Gaelic and the SQA results here. You've done 7 candidates for advanced higher Gaelic, which is good, and the results are absolutely first class as well. 3 pupils, 3 adults, and getting A's as well. Is there any other subjects that you are doing in advanced higher? Because we're coming on to another HMIE report later on that mentions this. Is there any other subjects that that eSchool has been used to do to help with both higher and especially advanced higher, particularly in schools where there is a limited number of staff? I'm not only talking about Western Isles, but I'm talking about other island areas as well. And I know you know many of them. I know some of them, and they haven't got enough teachers to do the advanced higher. Is there any progress on moving forward on that one?
Thank you. The work we're doing with national qualifications in Gaelic is funded in partnership with UHI. Now, as a further education institution, the UHI are able to draw down funding credits for every learner that's enrolled, and that's from the Scottish Funding Council, which is something that only further education colleges and universities can't do. Now, we've looked to work with other education providers, New College Lanarkshire, and a number of other institutions to see what else we could offer, because as you say, the curricular offer is limited and dependent on where you are, and it's not just an issue that affects young people in islands, it's an issue that affects young people in urban areas as well. There are a whole suite of niche courses, advanced hires, as you say, that are off limits to young people across Scotland, because the teachers that are able to teach these subjects are either not in their schools, or there is no prospect of a viable cohort in that subject. Now, as part of the work we're doing with Scottish Government to take forward the ambition for a national digital academy, we did go out to schools just towards the beginning of 2025 with a suite of courses, higher and advanced hires, just precisely for the reasons that you say. But because there's no funding mechanism there to underwrite the cost of these courses, the fee that was put against each learner was, I think, £1,200. It costs in the region of £12,000 to maybe £14,000 per hire advanced higher course to deliver. If you factor in, teacher earnings and on costs and so on. So for a viability threshold of around 8 to 10, we'd put that figure of 1,200 against each course. Now, schools want it, young people want it. The UNCRC is now in the statute book, and we've got a duty to provide a curricula that meets the needs of our young people. But I think for schools and local authorities across Scotland, it was very, very difficult for them to liquidate the little money that they have available, and to pay for individual young people. So we are working with Scottish Government, working with ADIS, working with others as well, to see how we can look to take forward that ambition next year. The only course that we ran this year was one we underwrote ourselves with part of the funding that we received, and that's for advanced higher maths. And I'm pleased to say that, to my knowledge, there are at least 2, if not 3, young people from the Isle of Barra, who I think are on that part of that cohort, able to take that subject that wouldn't have been running in Castleby School. So it's complex. There's a political will and a will within schools to see it happen, but it's complicated because, as I say, the money that's allocated to schools for delivering education is tied up in salaries. And I'm sure from a school or a local authority point of view, if you do it for one, you're then almost obliged to do it for everybody. And it could, could upset a lot of people if one person gets a course that wasn't available to them in their school and others are denied. So watch this space. Maybe next year I'll have something more concrete to report. But advanced higher maths is the only advanced higher that we're running at the moment, in addition to Gaelic.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. That's pretty comprehensive. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, Vice Chair. You never see it. It's too big. It's too big.
So, thanks very much, Stephen. It was just a question around the National Digital Academy. Obviously, just wanted to see how advanced the discussion be with the Scottish Government, and any ideas, obviously, on timescale, and also any ideas of what will the National Digital Academy brings to the Western Isles in terms of, added value to ours. Thanks very much.
I mean, the National Digital Academy, as I say, it was a manifesto commitment, and we're now coming towards the end of the parliamentary term. eSchool is retaining a lead role in terms of innovative digital delivery across Scotland. We are, in the words of Scottish Government themselves, contributing to the evolutionary development of that National Digital Academy. But it's not there yet. We're not over the line. We're not established as a National Digital Academy. eSchool is still in receipt of annual funding, which makes it very difficult for us to plan with a degree of confidence. And because of the way the financial year runs, and we're looking to deliver within the academic year, the timescale doesn't always work for us to get our offers out there in good time to make sure that schools are aware. We are in pole position in terms of fulfilling that function on behalf of Scottish Government. But as I was saying earlier on, there are opportunities for us with the election next year, but there are also a number of potential things we need to look out for as well. I think that if we do secure that National Digital Academy, and if it can, as a key component of its delivery, be looking to meet the needs of interrupted learners from across Scotland, we could really be looking at a significant outfit that would be, from my perspective anyway, headquartered here in the Western Isles, that could be delivering a really impactful service across Scotland. There are 18,000 young people in Scotland at the moment who have an attendance of less than 50%. It's an issue for ourselves here in the Western Isles. It's an issue for every school, every demographic across Scotland, and out with their own nation as well. And for some young people, re-engaging them on their terms, from their safe space, without anxiety triggers, is the way to get them back into learning, working in partnership with colleagues in schools and other agencies to try to get them back on track, because the you know, the pathway they're on is not towards anything particularly successful.
Okay. Do you want to speak again, Mustafa? Do you want to follow up? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the benefit quite clear to me, you know, but the advantage of having National Digital Academy, especially headquarters here, I was just because the fact that he was already a manifesto commitment, and you know, is there anything we can do as a CORLA or as members to? I know you're trying to secure that in all the other manifestos, but is there anything else we can do maybe to make sure that this time it's going to happen?
I meet regularly with the chief officer, and I know that he has discussions with the chief executive, and I know there's been correspondence from their own end as well with cabinet secretary to remind them of you know, the potential and of that manifesto commitment, and our willingness to see that fulfilled, and our willingness to support them in realizing these ambitions. So I would encourage you to continue to involve you know, local representatives, and to engage in correspondence, and you know, to ensure that that manifesto commitment is fulfilled, and that it's as strong and comprehensive as it can be, because I think we've now coming towards, you know, towards PERDA, we need to make sure that that correspondence goes in you know, in advance of that kicking in. So I think the chief officer's wanting to come in, so I'll hand over.
Thank you, Chair. Just to build on what Stephen has already provided here, that we have been lobbying with the Cabinet Secretary with the area of responsibility for this and with the relevant officers in Scottish Government. The policy area sits within the Education Reform Directorate of Scottish Government, and as some of you may be aware, that's a very busy directorate at the moment that is working through reform of SQA, Qualifications Scotland, the Independent Inspectorate, and reforming of Education Scotland into a dedicated curriculum agency, as well as other aspects of education reform. So it sits within a very busy portfolio. And as such, there's some concern that it maybe hasn't had the prominence that we would want it to have. But to reassure members, we continue to lobby with the Cabinet Secretary and the relevant senior officers of that directorate, both in terms of the funding that Stephen has spoken about, but also advancement of the policy of the National Digital Academy.
That's right. Okay, I think. Okay, Councillor McCormack.
Thank you very much, Chair. Excuse me. First of all, it gives me a great deal of pleasure when one of my contemporaries on mainland Scotland tells me that their grandchildren have been taught through eSchool. I'm always very proud of that fact because it's been a significant and very beneficial initiative on our part. I wanted to ask, on the back of the discussion that's just taken place about excluded children. There has been quite a lot of information in the press of late and discussion on the radio about excluded children in Scotland and the implications of the fact that at the moment schools are being discouraged from excluding pupils and containing pupils who would, under past circumstances, been excluded. And I wonder to what extent, I mean, exclusion surely should not mean just that they don't go to school. It should mean that their education takes place in some other way. And I wonder to what extent eSchool might be one of these ways of dealing with that kind of situation so that education can go on in the classroom.
Where there's a willingness to engage in learning, I think eSchool can be part of the solution. Depending on what the context for that exclusion has been, there's not always a willingness to engage. And without interrupted learners provision, primarily the young kind of the demographic of the learner that we tend to support will typically be a young person who has experienced some sort of mental health crisis. There'll be high levels of anxiety. A large number of these young people will be in receipt of an autism spectrum diagnosis as well, who really struggle with a busy, high sensory school environment. Now, some of these young people are so fragile and vulnerable, that putting somebody disruptive into that mix is not going to be in their interests. But I'm not saying that you couldn't have an alternative provision for those who've been excluded for behavioural reasons or whatever that might be, but there has to be a willingness to engage. Now, that might be that the excluded learner would access that provision from an area within the school, or it might be that they would access it from home. But the potential is there to certainly meet the needs, or at least make that offer of education for any young person who's been excluded. But there has to be a willingness to engage, because there's more expected of them in terms of their own, especially the joining from home. There's nobody there to necessarily do it for them and ensure that they A, join the call, and B, engage with the work.
Yes, I recognise that, Stephen. Anybody in an excluded situation like that would have to have support to allow them to take on the education. But the point, I suppose, that I'm trying to make is that we should make every effort to ensure that anybody who's excluded is nonetheless educated, because otherwise they're just going to get worse. Thank you.
Thanks. Right, I think we've had a good chat here about eSchool. So, I mean, I'll just move on. So, do members agree to note the report? Yep. Thanks, Steve. That's really, really good, really interesting. So, thanks a lot. So, we'll move on to item 4, which is, when I get my glasses on, report by Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland of Early Learning and Childcare Provision 2024-25. This report provides the outcome of the caller's early learning and childcare setting engagement with the Care Inspectorate and His Majesty's Inspectorate of Education and Care Inspectorate joint inspections visit from June 2024 to June 2025. And Ms. Mary Claire Ferguson will speak to the report and answer any questions. Thanks, Mary Claire.
Thank you, Chair. This annual report, as you said, outlines the outcomes of the caller's early learning and childcare settings engagement over the period from June 2024 to June 2025. The self-evaluation for self-improvement is a key feature of improving the early learning and childcare experience for our children and their families. As well as external scrutiny, self-evaluation is a main focus within our ELE settings and focuses on the quality of provision in relation to the national key guidance and quality frameworks promoted nationally. As outlined in 5.3, the Care Inspectorate inspects against the 4 key areas: how good is our care, play and learning, how good is our setting, how good is our leadership, how good is our staff team. Also outlined in 5.4, His Majesty Inspectorate of Education inspected against the following quality indicators: learning, teaching and assessment, securing children's progress, leadership of change and ensuring wellbeing, equality and inclusion. As indicated in 6.1 within the table, 11 settings were inspected in last year's academic year and were graded as shown on the table. 7 settings were inspected the previous year and gradings have improved in some areas from this period of time, with more gradings being awarded as good or very good. The early years service continues to be committed to provide high quality learning and childcare within all our settings. Currently, a new national joint quality improvement framework for early learning and childcare sectors has been recently published and will form an important part of our quality assurance process to assist us in identifying areas for improvement through self-evaluation for self-improvement. All joint inspections from this week with the Care Inspector and HMI will utilise the framework as part of the inspection process. It will provide us with an effective tool to assist early years staff to reflect their processes throughout our settings, where settings are encouraged to examine the quality and effectiveness of their work. Following recent inspections, improvement plans have been implemented in collaboration with the Care Inspectorate, the management team and staff to address the identified requirements and recommendations. These are monitored throughout the academic year as part of the quality assurance processes to ensure progress has been made to address the requirements. It is recommended that the caller note the report and continue to support early learning and childcare settings to implement continuous improvement in keeping with the quality frameworks. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marie-Claire. Thanks for that. So, Councillor Callum McLean, I think, is first.
Thanks. Thanks for that report.
No, he's not.
Can I just ask a question, and maybe Mrs. Murray at Stornoway will help me out on this, but I noticed that the HMI are more generous in their terminology when they do an inspection. Instead of adequate, they put in satisfactory in grade 3. Am I old-fashioned, or is adequate the same term as satisfactory? Satisfactory seems to be a more gentle term. Do you not think so? Adequate doesn't seem. If somebody says you're adequate, it doesn't give the impression that you're satisfactory. So that's what I say. That's what I feel anyway. And I'm just putting this in as a maybe a request to Care Inspector if they could, because I look down here and the first thing that comes out at you is adequate. And yet, when you go to the other ones, when HMI are doing their inspections, satisfactory. I'm just making a
observation
comment. I don't know if it's cynical. I never thought I would be complimentary of HMIE, but here I am complimenting HMIE. But I'm just saying the terminology when we got there, because you look at Comhairle, and you've got all adequates, whereas if that was an HMIE, it would be satisfactory. Seems better.
Thanks.
Would you agree, Marie-Claire?
Thank you,
Maybe
Councillor.
you're allowed to say, maybe I shouldn't be asking you that question. Maybe you're not allowed to say it.
Thank you, Councillor
better not-
McLean. I'm not sure if I would be able to comment,
I'll comment on that.
but
yeah.
I appreciate your comment around that, and I think it is often around language and maybe looking beyond both adequate and satisfactory around the descriptors around them. Yes, I think there's probably quite a bit of similarity, but yeah, probably not able
Leave
to
it at
comment.
that, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Cheers. Councillor Murray. Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think I seem to remember that HMI used to have adequate and changed to satisfactory, perhaps for reasons that Councillor McLean has suggested there. I wondered, you speak about the self-evaluation. I wondered if you could comment on the opportunities that settings have to learn from each other, because there's obviously some here who have very good ratings, good and very good, and others who don't, and how much opportunity do they have to learn from each other?
Thank you, Councillor Murray. We actually have, we're moving into our 3rd year of what is, and again, it's been a play with words, so I think we're now calling it monthly network sessions with our early years practitioners, and for that very reason, to encourage sharing of very good practice and also supporting and assisting settings with their improvement agenda. So that's worked very well. This year we've really reached out further to our practitioners to have a greater involvement with them. Before now it was very much around the management side of early learning and childcare, but we now have practitioners' engagement with that.
Okay, thanks. So if there are any other questions, anybody have any other questions? Okie dokie. So if there are no other questions, do members agree to note the report and continue to support early learning and childcare settings to implement continuous improvement in keeping with the quality frameworks? You do. Just like to welcome the Nicholson pupils that have just arrived. So hope you enjoy the session and learn quite a bit. So thanks for coming. Right, so we'll move on to item 5, which is the report by HM Inspectors of Education at Leverhulme Memorial School, August 2025. This details the outcome of the inspection at Leverhulme Memorial Primary School and the nursery class by His Majesty's Inspector from Education Scotland and the Care Inspectorate jointly. Upon conclusion of the inspection, the newly appointed head teacher and the early years support officer have commenced work with the staff of the school to develop and implement an action plan to address the agreed areas for improvement under the direction of the head of education. And I think, is David, you speaking to this report, are you? Or who? Marie-Claire, you speaking again. And I'd just like to welcome Donna McLean, who's the head teacher of Leverhulme School, to answer any questions, any further questions, if anybody wants any. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to inform the Comhairle of the outcome of the inspection at Leverhulme Memorial Primary School and Nursery class by His Majesty's Inspectors from Education Scotland and also the Care Inspectorate. A team of inspectors from Education Scotland and the Care Inspectorate visited Scotland Leverhulme Memorial Primary School and the nursery class, the Scolari, in April 2025 for a full inspection model involving a 5-day visit to both the school and the Scolari. 5.2 outlines how Education Scotland evaluated the school and Scolari against the 4 key quality indicators using their national 6-point scale, and 5.3 outlines the Care Inspectorate's slightly different 6-point scale with minor variations in definitions when providing evaluations of early learning and childcare settings. 6.1 outlines the Joint Inspection Report was published in August 2025 and highlighted a number of strengths of the school and the Scolari and the school through the mediums of both Gaelic and English. And I won't go through all of these, but as I have the head teacher beside me, the acting head teacher was noted to lead very effectively with integrity, sensitivity and a strong focus on solutions. She is well supported by staff who have had the best interests of children at the forefront of their work, and staff have taken forward effectively projects to improve the school. Also to note, in the school and Scolari, the nursery children are enthusiastic and eager learners who benefit from high quality experiences in a range of situations. These are led by the staff team, the community and partners. Children develop through real-life knowledge and skills that are local to their island and promote well-being and equality. The areas of improvement outlined in 6.2 were identified and discussed with both the acting head teacher and myself, the head of education, and these areas have now been included in the action plan along with other aspects for development which were outlined in the inspection process. At this point, early in the session, a number of these action points have already been completed. The recommendation to the Comhairle is to note the findings of the inspection report, including key strengths and areas for development, and support the Scotland Leverhulme Memorial Primary School and the Scolari to develop and implement an effective action plan which will address the areas for improvement within the HMI report. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marie-Claire. Does anybody have any questions for Marie-Claire or Donna? Okie dokie. Okay, that's good. Right, so do members agree to the recommendations at 3.1? Thank you, and thanks for coming, Donna. Thanks for making the effort to come out. Thanks. Right, so we'll move on to item 6, which is the report by HM Inspectors of Education at 3 Scott School in August 2025. Well, the purpose of the report at item 6 is to inform members of the outcome of the inspection at Scotland at 3 Scott School by His Majesty's inspectors from Education Scotland. Upon in conclusion of the inspection, senior education officers have commenced work with the staff at the school to develop and implement an action plan to address the agreed areas for improvement under the direction of the Chief Education Officer. Mr. David Downham will speak to the report and answer any questions. And I just want to say that Andy Murray from 3 Scott School head teacher is here as well. So if you have any questions for him as well. Okay, right. Thanks a lot, David.
Thank you. Yeah. A team of inspectors from Education Scotland visited Surrey Scott School for a full model inspection involving a 5-day visit to the school. Education Scotland published an inspection report in the form of a letter on the 19th of August 2025. The letter sets out the school's key strengths, which is identified in 6.1, and agreed areas for improvement in 6.2. Evaluative judgments against quality indicators from Education Scotland using their 6-point scales, which was in 6.1 as well, and signposting to the online summarised inspection findings, SIF, on Education Scotland's website, where further detail and recommendations are laid out. There should be recognition that the report identified learners as proud speakers of Gaelic and Gaelic medium education, and children and young people in the school achieve well in music and cultural, language and sporting events both locally and nationally. The report found that children and young people are polite, respectful and articulate. They enjoy caring and positive relationships with staff and are keen to learn and achieve well. Upon conclusion of the inspection, senior education officers, alongside the staff of the school, have already developed and begun to implement an action plan to address the agreed areas for improvement with support from the Central Education Team. Education and Children's Services Department senior officers will continue to provide support and challenge to the school through regular visits and monitoring of the action plan. I'm happy to take questions now.
Okay, thanks, David. So does anybody have any questions for David or Andy at all? Okie dokie. Okay, right. If that's the case. Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. It's good to see the positives in this report, but overall, it's concerning. First of all, I'd like to ask David Downing, in the main report on the website, the inspectorate are at length to say that the school had already undertaken, well, there was already an ASE, as we used to call it, an assisted self-evaluation taking place in the school. How long before the inspectors came could that ASE take place?
We visited the school in November and the inspectors came in March. March.
March. So you had a rough idea of what was going on in the school?
Yeah.
And did you have an action plan in the school which they were able to see?
Yeah, we provided that as evidence to HMI when they came to show them what we'd identified.
And was your findings pretty similar to what the HMIE had?
There were some similarities, yeah. There was definitely areas that were similar, but they also had different areas that they were looking at. They obviously, with a large team that comes into the school, are able to go right the way across and look at a much broader breadth of classes and experiences and look into things a bit more detailed than our smaller team is. But there were similar trends in the information that was provided, yeah.
So it's no shock of you to see this. It's a pretty a shock of us to see this, because if I look back 20 odd years ago, Sir E. Scott was one of the top 10 schools in Scotland according to achievement. And now looking at this report, it's not good. I must be honest. I'm sure the chair as he is Harris councillor. But one of the things that are in the main report was the problem with Gaelic. I know you are advertising for a Gaelic teacher. Is that correct? Have you achieved that?
Just come on, Andy. Can you just take your mic off, David? Yeah, that's it. Okay, thanks, Andy.
Yeah, so there is an advert out for a Gaelic teacher, but we haven't appointed anyone yet. So that advert has gone out. There was no applicants the first time round, so it has gone out to re-advert.
Is it a full-time Gaelic teacher? Or is it a 0.5?
It's a 0.8.
0.8.
4 days per week.
I'm just making a comment here, and I'll just make a comment. It is difficult enough to get a full-time teacher to the Isle of Harris. It is really difficult to get a full-time teacher to come as a 0.8 appointment, because they're not going to come to the school. Is there any way that the authority could improve that Gaelic provision by saying we must give a full-time Gaelic teacher, because we're not going to get one? Because I'm sure this advert has been out for quite a while. Is that correct?
Yeah, because it's a re-advert. Yeah, so
yeah, it's a re-advert. So in order to improve the Gaelic within the school, in my opinion, you would need a full-time Gaelic teacher. I don't want you to comment on that, the head teacher, because you're...
If I could answer to that.
That'd
be fine. I think, what's in the report as well, though, actually refers to the Gaelic provision across the secondary. So it's about having Gaelic speaking subject teachers across subjects, and that can be sometimes a piecemeal offering based upon who you have in the school and whether they are Gaelic speakers. Obviously, when we recruit, we are focusing on, it's a real strength if somebody has Gaelic, but historically over the last few years when we've been recruiting for subject teachers, they haven't been Gaelic speakers. So that reduces the Gaelic medium provision across the secondary. So yeah, I mean, I can't obviously comment on on the Corliss decision around the 0.8, or whether it's a full-time post. But I totally take on board what the councillor said.
You come in, Don. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that the vacancy is there because of a promotion internally within the school as well. We've recruited and appointed into a principal teacher role for Gaelic within the school, which this is a resultant vacancy from that. So it is with the effort of trying to strengthen the Gaelic medium provision and Gaelic provision across the curriculum in secondary. We have a due process that we have to follow in terms of going through recruitment processes. If it's deemed that this recruitment is not successful, we will go back through that process to evaluate what we can do to make the post more attractive. But equally, we have to staff the school as we'd staff all our schools according to the needs of the pupils within them.
Yep, sure. Come on.
Yeah, sorry, I'm
Yeah, no,
laboring
that's
on,
fine. Yeah.
But the other one is the provision of hires and advanced hire. And as I said to Stephen already here today, one of in the report, it does say that there is not the availability of advanced hire for some pupils because of, and that is a problem we've got. Is there any way, Mr. Downton, that you could help the school in this respect?
There's obviously limitations with the staff that you have in the school. So, you know, the priority, if you've got, say, a single person department, would be your national 5 and your hires. And if there's availability in and around about that, then we can create that. And as was kind of suggested earlier on, the staffing in the school is limited by the number of pupils that you have and the calculations that we usually create. So we have looked at kind of flexible ways of delivering advanced hires with the number of periods that are actually taught by the teacher, but that means that the young person themselves has to be kind of driven and wanting to be able to work independently, and that sometimes that's not suitable for everybody. So we are trying different things to try and accommodate it, but in and around the staffing at the moment, I don't think there's any solution there.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of points I would wish to make in response to Councillor McLean there. Firstly, as Stephen Graham has already pointed out, there's absolutely potential within ESCOL. Also, there is potential for us internally within the authority, aside from ESCOL, to draw classes together across our 4 secondary schools to create effective cohorts of advanced hires or other niche subjects. However, we face challenges with that, one of them being what Stephen has already highlighted about disaggregating costs from the running total running cost of schools to be able to fund these where we have to buy them in. But also we face significant challenges from our own local negotiating committee for teachers and that of trade unions nationally, who continue to take a position that pupils cannot access these courses without the supervision of a GTC registered teacher. And as such, that puts significant pressures on overall deployment of staffing and the ability to create these cohorts where ultimately 17, 18-year-old young people could be accessing courses, but are being hamstrung by the requirement to have a teacher present in the room. So that is a difficulty that we're trying to square in terms of increasing and opening doors for online offer at the same time as satisfying the expectations of teachers' conditions of service and trade union negotiating positions.
Yeah, coming. Yeah.
Sorry.
No. It's got.
It's on 6.4 in the report. It says there the managing inspector states that the school needs additional support. That would have been highlighted in the assisted self-evaluation, was it? 4 months, 5 months before then.
There's lots of different kind of areas of support, and one of the areas of support was support for learning, and we've increased support for learning assistants and support for learning teachers within the school, or we're in the process of doing it to make sure that we can support the work within the school. I don't know if it refers to anything out with that area.
What I'm saying is, having had the self-evaluation, that would have been in position before the HMI had come. If that was the case, why are they highlighting this?
The assisted self-evaluation that took place in November did highlight development needs, and they were in the process of being supported, and an action plan was drawn up and resourced. However, as Mr. Downham has explained, the scope and range of the the HMI inspection was greater than that of the ASE and brought in other elements of consideration that were not part of that original focus, and as such would not have had aspects recorded in the action plan relating to them. Subsequent to that, though, I would wish to reassure the Chamber that the school and the education officers that are working around the school have ensured that additional resource and support is being provided in multiple different ways, including additional staffing, additional management support, additional visits and scrutiny, and further assistance to self-evaluation and other resources that have been highlighted as part of the inspection. So I would wish to reassure on that basis that anything that has been highlighted as a need for a resource, we have worked with the school to try to provide.
Just to finish, I wish the head teacher all the best in his action plan for the school, and I hope the school does come on. And we wish you all, I'm sure we all give our support to him and to his staff at this time, because they need, having had this, they do need help and support at this time, and particularly from the Chamber.
Thanks, Cam. That's really appreciated. So thanks for that. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, is there anyone else? Nope. Okie dokie. If there's no other questions, I thought somebody at the back was going to ask a question. So do members agree to the recommendations at 3.1? Okay, right. Thank you. And thanks for attending, Andy. Thanks. So we'll move on to item 7, which is the attainment in the Broad General Education Senior Phase 2025. This is in relation to attainment, Broad General Education and SQA qualifications 2025, and provides a summary to the caller of attainment, performance and outcomes in the Broad General Education, BGE, Primary 1 to S3 and Senior Phase S4 to S6 in the 2024-25 session. This year, 525 pupils across our 4 secondary schools were presented for 2,656 different awards and qualifications, with an overall pass rate in the Western Isles of 80.2% across all levels and courses. Again, Mr. David Downing will speak to the report and answer any questions. And I just want to quickly talk about last week. We had the seminar, which I have to say was quite poorly attended by councillors, and one of the things that I take some responsibility for that, in terms of it was quite short notice and it wasn't at maybe the best time, but having said that, head teachers and David put a lot of effort into preparing for that, especially very, very busy. David came up from US, as did Gordon Young from Scotland, and they came specially for it. So what we're going to do, we had the survey, and we've had 2 requests since for further seminars, which we're working with Derek. We're going to schedule into committee weeks coming forward. So I would hope, and hopefully that will be a better timing for councillors, but we would look to see more engagement from councillors in terms of attendance, because these guys, obviously they're a limited resource. They have limited time, and we want to use their resource as best as we can. So councillors need to support it, please, if you can. Okie dokie. So we'll just allow David now to speak. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to start with the BGE, which is 6.1 to 6.5 of the report. There has been significant work carried out to ensure that this year the process for teacher judgment in the BGE is as robust and accurate as it has ever been. This has ensured that we have the most accurate data as a starting point for driving improvement across the Comhairle schools. This year, we are able to report on some positive results in achieving curricular milestones based on identified areas for improvement from 2024, which included P4 writing in English and numeracy. In 2025, as a result of the interventions, we have seen significant improvements across these curricular milestones. Similarly, S3 Gaelic was identified as an area for improvement, and the interventions have resulted in a 3.6% increase in all of the S3 Gaelic curricular milestones being achieved. Moving on to the senior phase, S4 to 6, which is covered in 6.5 to 6.6 of the report. As just has been mentioned, a member's senior phase attainment seminar has been conducted for the first time this year. This has provided information to members directly from senior leaders in the 4 Comhairle secondary schools and eSchool regarding attainment data from the 2024-2025 academic year. This year, 525 pupils across 4 secondary schools were presented for 2,656 different awards and qualifications, with an overall pass rate in the Western Isles of 80.2% across all levels and courses. A smaller cohort of 14% less students than the previous year resulted in presentations reduced by 6.8% compared to last year. The number of presentations per pupil did, however, increase significantly, evidencing that pupils are being presented for more awards in 2025. Strong performance at S4 and National 5 awards saw pass rates at 82.9%, with young people performing well at this level across all schools. Passes at higher for S5 and 6 increased by 2.6%, and presentations at this level increased by almost 100 entries, which is 12%. Again, indicating more pupils achieving more awards at this level. The percentage of pupils in S5 to 6 achieving 5 or more awards at SCQF 6 higher equivalent increased by 2.7%. In S5 alone, the increase in 5 or more awards at this level was 4.2%. Data also indicates a reduction in presentations for advanced higher and an equivalent reduction in passes at this level. Caller officers and the school staff will undertake a thorough analysis of the results in detail to identify and address any issues highlighted. I'll move on to the annual participation measure, which is covered in 6.15 to 6.17 of the report. The SDS annual participation measure that reports on the participation of 16 to 19-year-olds in education, training or employment. The rate of young people in the Western Isles participating in education, employment or training is the 4th highest in Scotland at 96.2%, above the national average of 93.3%. This represents a small decrease of 0.6 from last year's figure of 96.8. These measures are important indicators of the effectiveness of our education system. The caller has 35.1% learners entering into employment, which is 14.4% more than the national figure of 20.7%. This is an indicator that more of our young people are utilising their skills locally, contributing to population retention and supporting the local economy. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, David. Does anybody have any questions for David? Oh, Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your report, and thanks also for the work put in for the seminar, which I personally found very useful, and I think it's something we should be repeating to have that level of detail that we were able to have a couple of hours rather than part of the committee. So I would encourage those who didn't get the chance to go if they have the chance in the future. 3 points. I think the first one is, if you take the table at 6.1, the CFE attainment in primary, it's in S3, sorry, and compare it to the attainment data in 6.3 at S3 for the pupils in receipt of PEF. I think that's quite a stark difference, and I think all efforts that are being put in to try and mitigate that gap in attainment are important, and it would be interesting to hear a wee bit more about that. My first point. The second point I wanted to make was on advanced hires. Obviously, the number taking advanced hires has gone down, and I think that links back to some of the conversations we've had earlier, where priorities will be given when staffing is tighter to National 5 and higher. And I think it's important to look at imaginative ways around that, but also to remember that advanced higher is not it's not the gold standard in terms of the likes of universities and employers that higher is. And so I don't think necessarily that's something we should perhaps get too caught up about. I think looking at improvements in higher is more important. And the final thing I would say on the annual participation measure, I think it's important to remember that is, again, very good in the top 4 in Scotland. Some significant differences from the national there, particularly being the number in education. It's over 10% difference of young people going into education when they leave school. And I think that's indicative of at least 2 things. One being the financial pressures on families of young people going away off the island for further and higher education, and perhaps taking a decision based on that to stay at home And also to remember that that's actually been one of our own priorities, to ensure that people aren't just going off the island just for the sake of it. They're going when there is a course that they really want to do, that they're committed to doing, because I think in the past we can remember a time maybe where young people were heading off, maybe because everybody else in their cohort was doing so, and perhaps not getting on so well and dropping out. It'd be interesting to know if, with a smaller percentage going away to education, are more staying in education. But I don't know if we have those figures, but that would be interesting to note. Thanks.
Thanks, Francis. Yeah, it was just to say quickly that the attainment seminar, we're hoping to make it an annual event. So again, hence the push on the attendance. And yeah, I agree with you regarding advanced hires. My own daughter was advised not to, before she went to university, was advised not to do advanced hires by the university and actually do more hires in 6th year to get a much broader range. So yeah, it's not always the gold standard. But thanks, David. Yeah.
Thanks. Regarding the kind of closing the gap, so within the stretch aims for the collar, they identify P1 to P7, and within that for literacy, the gap's actually widened by 0.8, which is a small amount, but that's sitting in the backdrop of attainment rising for everybody. And they believe that that's actually from could be potentially one of the reasons from the SIPC interventions. But what that's done is it's improved everybody's attainment has moved up, but it hasn't done anything to actually close the gap. So one of the actions off the back of this is to really target that gap for next year and try and raise attainment for everybody, but actually try and close that gap a little bit more. Interestingly, for numeracy, the gap did actually close this year. So it closed from 12.9 last year to 4.7 this year in numeracy. So that's quite a significant improvement. So that's positive. And I'll come back as well to the point about the advanced hire. And I was going to make that point as well, Chair, that quite often courses are looking for people to have a range of hires and not just be really expert in one particular area of education, and to show that they can kind of have a broad range of skills. We've also got foundation apprenticeships as well, which are a slightly different route to go through school. So it's not always just it's the linear route for young people these days, and advanced hires is the be all and end. But having had the conversations earlier on, there's definitely some work to be done to make sure that there's access for those that do need it or really want it.
Yeah, it's a problem that has been an issue right now. Is that all right, Francis? Yep. Councillor McCormack.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very interesting report indeed, and congratulations to our young people. When I went to university myself, 10% of the Scottish school population went to university. It's probably nearer 50% nowadays, and I have to say that I've always felt that was wrong, because going to university is not the be-all and end-all of anybody's education at all. It's okay for some people and not so good for others. And I also spent a significant part of my life assisting young people in their applications for university. And we were under huge pressure to get as many of these young people to go to university as possible. And I frequently felt that, I should be saying to the young person, why on earth are you going to go to university? There are other options that you should be considering. I think things have moved a bit. That's my understanding now. And you haven't mentioned anywhere in this report the word apprenticeship, for example. And I wonder if you could just tell us how exactly that has factored in to changing the profile of where people go to have their education once they leave school. It delights me that so many of our young people are now staying in the islands. That is what we want to encourage, because so often, if you go off to university and get a qualification, you don't come back. There are very limited opportunities to come back. So it's the thing we want to do is to encourage people into occupations and qualifications which will allow them to stay here, get employment and get good employment. So to what extent does that kind of thinking now factor into what is happening in our schools?
I think it's reflected in the data, you know, that we're seeing it's 14.4% more of our young people are going into employment, but included within that because they're actually getting paid as apprenticeships, which is them leading directly into employment and training at the same time. So like we were talking about different routes into it. I also mentioned previously about foundation apprenticeships. So while they're still in school, they've got a pathway that leads directly into employment and apprenticeships out with school. We're trying to avoid that linear movement up through the school where we go from National 5 higher, advanced higher, because that's not the route for most young people. You know, there's only actually a small portion of people that would follow that route. And what can happen to some young people if they're trying to attempt to do that, they can get caught out in a glass ceiling where they're not able to be any more successful. What we want to do is have a breadth of experiences so that they can access learning that's suitable to them and suitable to what their course or training is going to be post-school. So I think the thing that's changing more in schools is finding out about the young person's skills that they have themselves and what would be a suitable job or career for them and their interests. So this is the most important thing, and where they want to go and how they're going to be able to apply them. And it's about the school being able to create a curriculum that can cater for that and find their needs. And I think considering how small some of our schools are within the collar, it's amazing the opportunities that they do actually get within these small schools.
Yeah. I mean, I do appreciate that there is a change of attitude, and I'm hoping that that change of attitude will increase as time goes on, so that young people go into the appropriate training to get suitable qualifications, and in particular practical qualifications, which will allow them to actually work in our community. I'm pleased that at the emphasis that's indicated by the figures in this report, and I'm just encouraging you to continue with that type of way of thinking. It used to be, of course, that you were only an important school if you appeared in the Times list of number of hires you got. We have to get away from that kind of thinking. It's just absurd, and think in terms of what is best for our young people. Thank you.
Thanks, Angus. I'll just bring Donald in quickly before I bring...
Just very briefly, in response to Councillor McCormack, one of the things I would highlight is in the final table in the report, where in the column, the Comhairle percentage in employment for that cohort, going from 24.3% in 2019 to 35.1% in 2025. That is a reflection of the work that's happening in our schools in terms of diversifying the curriculum, particularly towards foundation apprenticeships, and that data now includes anyone in work undertaking learning. So that captures our modern apprenticeship pathways and any other in work learning and training that's being undertaken that's related directly to work. So that's the data starting to show the impact of our focus on retaining our young population and trying to meet our own economic priorities, and information from our labour market intelligence showing where there's opportunities within our local economy. Work yet still to be done. It's not a perfect match by any means, but there is signs in that data that we're starting to be impactful in terms of shifting the expectation and opportunity that young people have to undertake different kinds of courses in the upper stages of school, leading to in-work training and onwards employment opportunities that keep people living locally and contributing to the local economy.
Okay, thanks, John. I'm just bringing Kenny, who's next in line, and then Norrie. Somebody, I'll put it on, leave it on now. Oh, no, who's got the mic? Oh, thanks, Norrie.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Someone who attended that seminar the other week, I found it hugely beneficial. And I think, as he said, it's important that we have that, and that as many as possible take the opportunity, because being able to look at the figures for all the schools and hearing the presentations from all the heads for the secondary schools was excellent. And I think, looking ahead, I think the figures that we have here now should be part of that seminar as well, so we get the whole picture and not just the last few years, because the early years will have an impact on the later years. So I think it's something that we have to look at for going forward on that. And if we have to spend a whole day looking at it, I think it's important. It's the education of our young people, it's the future of our communities. And we maybe need to consider that and as going forward with this. On the report, I've got a couple of things from paragraph 6.2. One of them, an easy one, is possibly maybe my reading of it, but percentage change in attainments. I'm seeing quite a drop off, and the percentage changes is actually negative when you go from P4 to S3 over the years. I think it was the numeracy one that I picked up on first. There was a plus 6.4 from last year in P4, but actually almost a 10% drop off by the time you get to S3 to minus 1.9. But then when you look at all the other figures, certainly for the English ones, by the time you come to S3, it's a lot less improvement. Maybe it's because there's all the improvement happened in P4, and maybe that's what it is. So that was just a comment on that. But my main one is above that in the paragraph, 3.6% increase in all the S3 Gaelic curriculum milestones being achieved, which is great. But in the seminar last week, we saw that in the Nicholson Institute, we have less than 10% of the pupils at S4 doing Gaelic. Now we have Gaelic first as a policy, and I raised this at the seminar, that I think it's possibly an indication of a failure on all of us, not just the schools, but the council and our policy, that if it's less than 10% of the pupils in our largest secondary school are actually doing Gaelic as a qualification at S4, that's not preparing them for the workforce, for the workplace, and getting out there into the world of the Western Isles and supporting the future of the Gaelic language. And I think it's something that we have to be aware of and maybe look at ourselves and see how we can improve on that. I know Leenaclet have started a qualification for Gaelic and for work and life, which is probably more of what we need rather than Gaelic to go on to further education and to study Gaelic in university. More people want to be speaking Gaelic in the community, and I think we have to be looking at that.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kenny. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I too remember a time when going to university was a bigger deal than probably it is now, where it was only a smaller percentage of folk attained a university placement. I think that's changed probably as a result of massaging unemployment figures in the first place. But, you know, the be all and end all at that time was to get a university place. And as everybody else that I knew went offshore and came back and earned greater sums of money than I ever did, I quickly realized that it wasn't the perfect destination for everybody. And I think we've seen that in the past now, that the differentiation between folk who go into an academic career and folk who actually gain a vocational or training qualification, where they can go out and earn very decent sums of money and become again better employed, shall we say, than people who may struggle with an academic qualification. You know, people with vocational qualifications, with the trade skills, will always be in demand. I think everybody's perception of what it means now to become either academic or have a trade or a skill has completely been blurred. There's no differentiation anymore. You were very jealous of people with the skills to earn decent sums of money through their trade. And I think this lofty aspiration to go to university, that's no longer the case. I think people who have gone out, and we've proved that, I think, through the positive destinations that we have through the Nicholson. We've got MCR pathways. We've got lots of avenues now where we're taking the people who have the skills to do something different other than pursue an academic career and point them in the right direction. And I think the destinations, I think the figures we have for the Nicholson will bear that out. I think we were one of the best performing schools when it came to positive destinations. So the whole thing has become blurred now. I think people are now looking for skilled tradesmen rather than folk with an academic qualification. So I think in the 40, 50 years since Angus and myself probably went to university, that's become a misnomer now, that being having gone to university somehow sets you apart. I think it might set you apart, but probably not for the reasons we're talking about here. I think people with skilled trades now have a far greater potential to earn regular sums of money and have a significant career with the skills that they've got. And I think through the Nicholson, MCR pathways, etc., we're pointing people in the direction that they should be pointed in for their own skill sets. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of that if the figures that we've been presented with are borne out. So, I mean, everything's changed. I think we're looking now for more and more skilled tradesmen and people to work, not men, women as well, to work, you know, in our industries. And they're becoming far more valuable than possibly folk who've gone to university and attained a degree in whatever it is that may prove useless in the end. I think skills are important, and we build a country on these skills. So I think we're doing a decent job from what I remember of the academic the pathways destinations that the Nicholson were pointing folk to. So again, it's just a changing, evolving landscape, and we need to change with it.
Thanks, Norrie. I'll just bring in Donald here, and then we'll bring it to a close because time's going on. Right. So.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald, for your comments. I just wanted to come back to the points from Councillor MacLeod in terms of the table at 6.2, just to clarify that the percentage variation there is in relation to that same class group from last year. So the P4 numeracy at 6.4% plus, for instance, indicates that this year's P4 were 6.4% above last year's P4. So it's not comparing the same cohorts from the same starting point. It's a comparison to the previous year specifically. So it's not possible to compare the plus 6.4 to the minus 1.9 because it's comparing just the same stage of education rather than the same cohort of pupils. So it's just to clarify that. And also would agree, and we spoke at length at the seminar in relation to pathways through both Gaelic medium and Gaelic learner education, which is an increasing focus for us in the service as well. Positive to see the improvement in attainment at S3, but still have work to do to reinforce the uptake of Gaelic into qualifications and certification.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, okay. Right, thanks, Donald. Right, so I'll bring this to a close. I was going to take a break, but we'll do one more item and then we'll take a break because some pupils have just come in. They'll only be here for about 10, 15 minutes. Right, so anyway, item 7. Do members agree to note the report? Thanks, David. Thank you. We'll move on to item 8, school estate pre-consultation for closure of Burnera School. The purpose of the report is to seek approval to begin the statutory consultation process for the permanent closure of Burnera School, which involves conducting an options appraisal with the community. And Miss Patricia MacLeod will speak to the report and answer any questions. Right, Trish, you're on. Cheers.
Another show, a jury and the Comhairle get the hard shachet or some co-connosrige hoshige as called beyonderai a gune vergei. The options appraisal is hier fruit the Rivianu Mahoris Chef shachet and ket. Is a shorse fin messig a hasho agus yo a hornsnach codem biachgan a hard shachet at the huge. Hashin mar Comhairle a Eilean fin go glue an act da vile se Schools Consultation Scotland. As Golviarndarai edhi dunch ach jesol van woonastel da vile se figet se hun agus econoim charwach trúd et kwar na scolle agus van de parent in de jury kun jege found show gus gol na loch. Hua dat fus van de Comhairle son found a gule naun. On the version Har fus gefarmal hien isteach na Comhairle ga fuskelige dieis, agus chanel ader chanje obrachal anachach. Ha koskish na vibe agus glige skolle dieis skriefje aan de nadish kihet pointje hun. Ach on de skriefshin show ha sin einde maach gewel kron van amasher tachert agus koskia barach na nan 10 mile nog de ha skriefje de nadish goed kerst. Vi gan y sasge et coig a vichet míle nocht. Hanna heimplichach elle mar fog a ha na vibe skriefje a den adish kujok. Hische sio kujok ek hit pointje hun. Vi gan maach kujok nade a hort gunne kemenen a gemachine gual son cóchonachtra glianú leis a choinio sneach an na sia poinge hog. Agus man a hút mi ag toiseach a sin war a ced fuamh a gola verd gun chiad chéim. A mi tolit question ar a gardinis.
Okay, thanks, Trish. I'll just bring in Councillor Ranald Fraser online first. Councillor Fraser. Not that keen to speak at present. Right. Does anyone else have any? Is he on mute? No, no, he's not. Is he? Yeah. Yeah. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Ask a question. All right. Yeah. Councillor.
Thank you, Patricia. Can I ask you if you've had anyone lately applying to the, because there are quite a few young kids now.
He's gone off.
Nothing. Okay. That's fine.
Even rejoin the meeting.
Yeah, okay. Right, so we're going to briefly leave and rejoin the meeting, obviously, just to see if that helps you come through, Ranald, because we can't hear you at all. It was left with with Ranald to ask a question. So Ranald, can I have your question, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your patience. With the mothballing of educational provision at Benra School back in 2021, how has this affected the catchment area for Briasset School in relation to Gaelic and English medium provision?
Well, at the moment, if it's English medium, they'll go to Scornaloch, and if it's Gaelic medium, they'll go to Briascridge. That would be that's the catchments at the moment. But there's no children at the moment coming from Bernera to those schools, as far as I know. No. Oh yes, there is. There's a couple going to Scornaloch that moved into the area, and they go to English. They're from abroad.
Thank you, Chair. Can I have a supplementary to that?
Yeah, quick. Yeah.
With that in mind, can I ask, is the department actively, in a resolute fashion, encouraging formal inquiries for English medium education within the Briasset School catchment area, thus facilitating the recommencement of English medium at Briasset School?
There was a report at the last committee about that, and it's still mothballed at the moment, but open to inquiries about it.
But the nucleus of my question, Chair, is how proactive is the department when it receives inquiries for English medium within that locality?
The status of the English medium provision at Scoil Briascridge is that it is mothballed. So in year, we're not able to consider individual requests, but it's open for full enrolment. It's included in the full enrolment offer annually in January, February of every year. And there's the opportunity, and it's encouraged that it's available. It's advertised on the Comhairle website that you can enrol in English medium in Briascridge if you wish to. If that occurs, we would then have to take that requested information back to the chamber at the next sitting of the committee to consider removing of the mothballed status of the provision. So there is that opportunity annually to for parents to express interest and to enrol in English medium in Scoil Briascridge if they wish to, and that is promoted. That is available. That information is available on the website annually when it comes round to enrolment every year. To date, that there hasn't been a viable cohort able to be established that could consider that, but it is there should parents wish to do it. But because the provision is mothballed in year, there isn't able to be requests taken in year for it.
Okay,
yeah, one final request, Chair. As a useful example for myself and indeed the parent council at Briasset School, if he has time, would the Director of Education email me examples of cohorts which might end up with a resolution of the English medium reopening at Briasset School in the future?
Yes, I'll be happy to provide that information, Councillor Fraser. That certainly can do that, although it's not by any means an exact science, and it's for the Chamber to consider when it reviews the mothballed status of the school, whether it deems that to be a viable cohort. But I'm happy to provide potential of that. It's, as I say, it's not an exact science because it depends on ages, stages, sustainability, curriculum progression, and so on. So it's not purely a numbers game. It does have to consider individual cases, but I'll happily provide that information to Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, thanks, Ronald. So if there's no more questions or anybody wants to make any more comments, where are we? Do members agree to the recommendation or approve the recommendation at 3.1? Yep, right, we'll move on to item 9. We'll just rattle through these now because we're up against it for time. Because if we get to set it back 1:15, we'll have to adjourn the meeting if it's not finished. So we need to push on, guys. So item 9 is pre-consultation for closure at Tolster School. This report at item 9 seeks approval to begin the statutory consultation process for the permanent closure of Tolster School, which involves conducting an options appraisal with the community, and Ms Patricia MacLeod again will speak to the report. Thanks.
So, Madam Comhairle, Hanada show a giori na Cornlichan, Keta Hort Shachard, Conchonotrach a Hosha, Hookerson Skull Holostai, a Guna Gay in Trapshaw. A Diest is a options appraisal here through 3 Janum a Horshif Ket Shachard. Farm fire Muncher Holostai Corum, Biachkan Ake Insha Ede Rouge. Ashin mar Comhairle at the Villanting Glue an act, Boda Vilas a Jay, a Diest School Consultation, Scotland. An Skoll at the Vitunst, Ach Jeshol, von Wohnestel, Da Vilas a Neich Giag, Shin Shiab Liona and Ish. Econom van de parent van Guliere Giori en de Neichner a waar de chwaar a go Skolle Wach, agus waar clown en Giulein lebus van a Comhairle. On the Warshin, Harofus gefarmal at Hien a Stach van de Comhairle gar Fusclach a Diest mar Bunskol, get the Vacod Mount Gach Bliana a Gaim Clari in the Scorchin an Yaran. A Koskish na Leib a Rusclach Skol Holostai skrifje an zijn nadish a Kihid Pointje Heun, agus hanna heenplachig elle mar vlug a hanna Leib skrifje an een nadish Kujok Kihid Pointje Heun. Kiesef Kujok an a Shia Pointje Hoog na Kemenen a Jemig Shinigual son a Kochon of the Ginianu leis a Hoyersnok, agus man a hoort mi leis Nerelle, Hashina Lorak het all third. Kunnen Keem go options appraisal. Maha Kishtan Biakusha Hamichesho.
Well, thanks, Trish. Does anybody have any questions? Callum, yes, Councillor Cal MacLeod.
Thanks, Chair. It was the policy of the council in past days that that when a school was closed, like School that here, that the receiving school back would receive, how can I put it, some of the money that would be going towards the upkeep of that school. Sorry? In order for the school, that the receiving school of the Tolster contingent, that finance would be available for that school. Has that already been done with regard to Scholar Back, or are we just going to just leave it going? I'm just putting a request at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor McLean. There was no financial provision made in the decisions to mothball Scoil that resulted in transfer of funds from Scoil to Scoil. So ultimately the answer to that is no, other than that there are costs ongoing. The posted distinction that we have here is the school is mothballed rather than closed. So the Comhairle, it doesn't have necessarily the savings made that would allow it to be redistributed, because the Comhairle continues to incur costs in terms of the maintenance and upkeep of Scoil and the additional transportation costs for moving the pupils to from the Tolster community to Scoil. So there's no direct financial connection between the decision to mothball Scoil and the funding of Scoil. That's I suppose the ultimate answer there is no, there isn't. That may be a different consideration should the school be formally closed.
Okay, that's right. If there's no more questions, do members agree to where are we to approve the recommendations at 3.1? Okay, thanks, Trish. Thanks. Right, we'll move on to item 10, which is Gaelic Secondary Education Feasibility Study. This report provides an update on progress made in the undertaking of a feasibility study into the establishment of a dedicated Gaelic medium secondary education school in the Western Isles. A research team from Edinburgh University has been commissioned to undertake the first stage. Fieldwork for the study commences on the 22nd of September 2025, and a final report is expected in February 2026. And Donald McLeod will speak to the report. Thanks, Donald.
More thank Amy Tolich in you and I show hurt the veil and Shomer and Law in you. Channishin as in Yaran who has in Ket von a committee, I guess von a Comhairle, son Yarting on lay Ramsach Yanu Steerich Art School so Riche is on film to be in a Gaelic art school. Ever in Aish can you chef is hurt the veil my yente tachert for Norsen. Bas in first nog genu sin innovis is on pag is on Ramsach who has in this innovis for vein kalpa na Gaelic for Beeltas na Halaba, hamidillich, agus fashion Comhairle sin ein fop, agus hu sin a gnida vexonite son Ramsach fat Yanu, sin a sula hakinek a nida ha shock you. For hu sin in innovis on a project, has near vi coupled all haich gonagin, had is in name for hu sin fitzach, agus sin nish konant, steerlich an all haich, agus ha luchs Ramsach in nish a couple corner is a Comhairle is son plan steer, agus on a Ramsach, agus a mitolich gal fair in hech gunsa heen. Hannig get in Yelan ha loch Ramsach in nish in Yelan torsach Ramsach. A Ramsach Lianting ard in the torch for doyen raste ha fisser as an aish gaharig share point keher me yin dane kusper had govi Ramsach I can need a show gan a project. Vashin is sulige genaim en horsach gemich Chijak loch Ramsach aish geschrieben zich riochniger is on had a rash committee as in having Dr. Gabliona ach le nu het op de hak in de janu is on around zich at er specific had gain nach be aish jishal go toshach an aflon agus ration as ni sulige knik aish rash committee is on biachen horted in leerard tra an aflon am committee an aflon as a jaran be aish kicking in orson fun around zich show agus ma vis Cormac in kind of veil go pastor in no per ha Ramsach Gianni vision Comhairle in Gianni as in Sulach could be near Ramsach Condrang committee in a Gaelic fesker in you putting everything can homer in you so had the more you go per let sculpture agus a brain the oigri agus the teacher and the parent and by in husper in you be Kujaka Condrang committee in a Gaelic fesker agus you know his me Cormac a Conach bail Harry should a shock jock. Some Tolich questions me go out for committee Nash.
Okay, thanks, Don. Does anybody have any questions for Donald? Yeah, Susan Thompson, Councillor Susan Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report. I'm just at section 6.5. It says the field work in this phase will predominantly focus on Lewis and Harris. Does that mean that the decision has been made that it will be in Lewis and Harris? And if not, at what point will Lewis and Barra be involved in the field work?
As in haastken agent in art cat de leer is on the policies kan bech some me hard Comhairle show vi stage on Leos nu na herich. She show he had pars gan around sich agus she bit gopperly all high gon agent again die het kan wat geori tosige on a storm weg en hosoch le Lewis agus na herich ach biat liatoch an operation ko uist agus bara kujoch agus bia nu die biachkenne an homer so heen agus beilt de hat de geori janu me jen an policy hart er SJ fine around so gaat je decisions to me janu ka mi skol sé feasibility study ha seo sin general so an húspar agus a sin hín na rein fa skills die biachken se mi agus biachken jeffrey hien den clear agus gat hat tosche gan de Joos agus na herich bi at de genu op agus round so hi had shit us just barach is an biachken hort gejoch ba mi brin en je die se ver verskaun round so agus brinir de no je char biachken ein agus Portugal is tuig biachken a us agus barach agus bisin by benais gere hika.
So just so that I understand the timeline, the fieldwork will start now in Lewis and Harris, and that'll generate a report that we'll see in February, is that right?
Had de tosche gan Lewis na herige rast ach beter opere jenu som biachken hart a us agus bara kujoch agus bi chole kaart kool agus an aiske hiken afla. Bi biachken a us agus bara kujoch kan lei benaiske hika an afla. So had de tosche le opera san jelen rast ach beter jenu tilig oper had is er blione a show son biachken hart a us agus bara bi chole kaart kool agus an klare hika. An aiske hika.
So there won't be a predominant focus on US and Barra the way there is a predominant focus on Lewis and Harris. There'll just be a sort of, and you can contribute if you like.
En je zin gaan, ik be luchtbrandski koper fiachen die biachken horta us agus bara je net doise via de sulige biachken horta Lewis agus na herich. Sé policy is on na hin jere fatte her show agus bia nurische de an chomer geori re de mer hitcha der ach bi luchtbrandski koper tot biachken Harris in hele fat hat de torsige on Lewis agus na herich. Gaan je nog laat het al geweest just on ne opere jene.
So we will see a fieldwork phase that will be predominantly focused on US and Barra.
Se sin has ni sulige gerast. Had de torsige on Lewis na herich, dus ni geori me ne chorm biachken hart us agus bara kujoch. Maar we me graaf as ni kora gan je sich us die luchtbrandski son de soring en jenu skollen ha geori van trivien gaelic Harris us agus bara. So an hora getachert kolagach had de torsige lichen op het Lewis na herich.
But there'll only be one report that'll come in February.
As in kerst be aisk ek jere around so dat is jege goede kaal had te fijne maag. Ek torse gaan afla.
It's possibly just that the language in the report then is a bit unfortunate because it certainly suggests that it will be predominantly focused on Lewis and Harris and there's no mention of US and Barra at that section 6.5. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I see your point right now. Yeah. Okay. Very good point. So yeah. Okay, I'll bring in Councillor Ray Mackenzie next, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this is great. It's a first step, and it's you know, there's a long way to go. I think it's long overdue, years overdue, but it's good to see that the first steps are being taken, and I appreciate it's going to be years probably before, you know, we actually see something physical on the ground. But the question I'm going to ask probably can only be answered in February or in a year February, and that is, do you have any approximate idea of potential pupils in the Western Isles for this Gaelic school? Is it possible to say, well, okay, there's possibly 100 or 200 or something, you know, just to give us an idea?
Sin páirtgan aránsach had de goper rast. Ha fisaking rast Harris in Eilean in fat conviat scholar had of trofallen Treviana Gaelic as a vinskol. ha cén checking in na Harvin sin a raste a ní a bheit darna lé gan na scolan ir fat har sé a vin skol a dultrafel te vína galig. Ut na ag na chal cén checking sé covíad gan na scolan na sin a hug ag go scols galig sohríte is an artskol. Agus ha ránach go vi gopur in feinach na kiisten sin. So as ni súlach go bí bakan mínach ar an húspera sin as an áis gur hika. Mar am grafis covíad skol a dultrafel te vína galig sa vín skol. Ach bí at a feinach na kiisten sin kut gan an opera hat a Gianni agus a vís a Gianni har sin no coisnach an trim na hoch na céhir skoltnacking se fiken man vich garis skol galig gaun an hug at da. Agus se sin keist a dolka skolarin agus a dolka parentin. So bechorga bakan fisiviaking ach gan hacher a ga vi buloch kein checking conviction verte hachris a gaat de feinach na kiisten sin as a ránach agus bechorga vi as an aiskere hika an aflan.
Okay, thanks, right. Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of this feasibility study. I hope there's going to be at least a section, if not some recommendations about the ability we have to train our own, actually on island and in the islands. So if we're looking to provide, if there's a Gaelic secondary school, actually having staff who are based here, maybe upskilled with Gaelic qualifications, actually while they're working on the job rather than having to move away to other areas to gain that qualification, and also people who are doing PGDE, etc. So I'd hope that there's going to be something in the report that covers that.
As ni súlach as ha skrifsach sé point ke keer gemeet de torske generatie geet loch go prochison skol. Gaan nie toch teacher in 'n vain is sin ach me ha skol galig is steeg as na helen en be me golle driach ge vi kantri vi filmt is galig had is de skol is fat. So as ni be de tot sul a gardire de nolig we son trinike agus a lot go prochison skol. Als je kunt natuurlijk zijn kan heel in de raast, maar ha structuur chemical vi trinike teacher en geharet as an art school as eigenlijk raast, maar je mag torak gaan je torchorm een koers janu ach go alhaich moor jo en sol morostik. Fiction je zulig ik me korm chemical steger art school uur as na helen en genete gabi kujach het trinike teacher as a school heen. Agus a kormen sin gan je sin diatoche ach biat tot sul art den olch we son larach loch goproch agus kan niet mer me graduach teachen ach loch goproch fat is on skoluur.
Okay, right. So if there are no more questions, do members agree to note the report? Okay, right, thanks. So we'll move on to item 11, which through Children's Services, and this is Fostering Adoption Inspection Update. And this is a report on the Fostering and Adoption Inspection Update, and Mr. Maxwell Smart will provide a summary overview of the progress made in addressing the issues identified in the Care Inspector inspection of the Fostering and Adoption and Continued Care Services in 2023-24, and will answer any questions. Thank you, Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair. Purpose of the report was to advise and update the Comhairle of progress in addressing the issues identified in the Care Inspector inspection, fostering adoption and continued care services in 23-24. The Care Inspector inspection of the fostering adoption and continued care service identified a number of requirements and areas of improvement. The inspection came at a time of significant disruption to these services, staff sickness, absence and reduced service capacity after the cyber attack on Comhairle and diminished evidential capture that would validate practice intervention. Consequently, the service was graded as weak in several areas. Remedial action to address the deficits identified by the Care Inspector have made progress, but not at the pace desired. This is due to service redesign, which has taken some time to progress and implement, and significant alterations in children's services management at this time. In recent weeks, there's been approval to appoint team leader resources to increase the capacity of social work support and fostering adoption and continued care service. and the service redesign will amalgamate the various services under one banner. The Children's Services resources will include fostering, adoption, kin care and continued care, as well as the extended learning resource service, satellite services and supported housing. Despite the difficulties highlighted in the inspection, there is thorough and detailed remediation plan in place that's ongoing, and progress is being made. Temporary support appointment has been made to strengthen and facilitate the changes required, as well as wider business support via the services of an officer from another section of Education and Children's Services. Practitioner capacity, a major concern identified by the Care Inspectorate, has been increased to 2 social workers to allow specialist work to be undertaken regarding adoption and fostering continued care. The names and functions document for the service has been revamped and policies have been rewritten and will be presented to the Comhairle for approval as they are completed. The author would recommend that the policy, the report is considered by the Comhairle and is given approval from here for this update. Be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Maxwell. Does anybody have any questions for Maxwell? Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Chair. Can I ask Max here? It's to do with the ending of continuing care placement at 14. And I noticed that the young person, when that person reaches 21, that the provision ends. Is that what's happening at present? Because as I speak to families where there is this care provision, they're very concerned about what happens to the then children and to themselves when this care. I know you've got in the next column, it says that there's going to be a great deal of interaction between the family and the authority. But at the present time, does the care finish at 21? Is this new, or is it been here all the time?
To a degree, it's been here all the time, but not on a formalised basis as the way it is now. Policy is really for us to continue care till about the age of 26. It's deliberately designed to support that entry into adult care in a far better way than previously was the case for care leavers. So it's a far more substantive policy, and partly the policy I'm about to present to the Comhairle is the continued care policy, which is really seeking to address deficits of old. So it will be supported by the continued support of children's services up until about the age of 26.
Yeah, I think that's the worry that I would have if I was a parent in that situation is at 21, because some of these children, they don't grow up as others, you know what I mean? I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's certainly to be looked at, and I'm glad you're taking cognizance of that and actually saying that to especially to the families who are going to be affected by this, so that you've got something in place. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. That was. If there's no more questions, we'll move on. But no, that's fine. That was actually for the next item, but it doesn't matter. It's answered now, so it's fine. Yeah, it's no worries. It doesn't matter now. No, there's no worries. Okay, so does anybody else have any questions for Max on fostering? Okay, right. So do members agree to note the report and the progress in addressing the various issues identified by the Care Inspectorate? Thanks. Right, we'll move on to the continuing care policy. Right. Item 12. This report recommends the adoption of the continuing care policy by the Comhairle. Again, would like to invite Maxwell to discuss the policy before I open up for discussion. Okay, thanks, Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair. Purpose of the report is to advise and update the Comhairle in addressing. No, pardon me, wrong report. My apologies. Yeah, the recommendations to the committee is the adoption of the continuing care policy. The policy is as yet in draft and is, and if endorsed, would be accepted as the accepted policy. It was recognised at the inspection of our fostering adoption continued care services that there were significant policy area gaps. The Care Inspectorate made various requirements of our service, of which the creation of a continued care policy was one such policy. The formation of this policy has sought best policy practice guidance from other authorities and adapted this to our own needs and practice. The need for better continued care support in Scotland has been a theme of research for some time. This was highlighted in the Independent Care Review of 2020, and the promise was adopted 5 years. That was adopted 5 years ago, and resulted in the framing of rights for care leavers and the placing of future duties and authorities to provide enhanced rights and supports to remain within a care placement. Policy notes the relevant rights and legislation, philosophy of care underpinning the policy, who is eligible, and the procedures to be followed, and financial supports that will assist better outcomes. It's recognised that care leavers have long had poor outcomes, poor life outcomes compared to their non-looked after peers in terms of education, employment, as well as in poorer physical and emotional health. This policy and practice guide has three main objectives: to address inequalities between looked after young people and non-looked after peers, to improve assessment, preparation and planning for young people leaving care, and to provide better policy outcomes. I would recommend that the policy be adopted, and would be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks again, Maxwell. Does anybody have any questions for Maxwell? Councillor Francis Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Smart, for the report. It might be just my reading of it, but I was looking at 7, point 7, who is eligible for continuing care, and point 8, who is not eligible for continuing care. And I wondered if it's a slightly contradictory element there. The first bullet point, or sorry, 7.1, it says that we have a duty to provide continuing care for all young people who request it. But at 8.1, where it lists the people we don't have a duty to provide continuing care for, the fourth bullet point says a young person whose carer / placement provider has indicated that they are unable or unwilling to continue to provide the placement. So there's obviously a bit of a discrepancy there. If a young person says they want to continue and we've got a duty to them, but the fact that the carer has indicated they're unwilling means you don't have the duty. So there's maybe something there that I'm not understanding. And I suppose following that up, and what you said about their outcomes, it might be, as well as the pupils, the PEF figures that we looked at under the attainment item, it might be useful to have the looked after figures, although I suppose the numbers, they were too small, so I'll just forget that. But just the first question, sorry.
It may seem counterintuitive, Councillor Murray, but sometimes, whilst the child may wish to desire to remain on, it may not be the desire of the carers themselves to do that. It would be incumbent on the authority to then provide alternatives to that. But I appreciate it looks like an anomaly, but it can't legislate for all issues, because a child and the carer might be of different views.
Thanks. I just wanted to check that, so we still have that responsibility, but it would be elsewhere.
Absolutely, yes.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Thanks, Max. Does anyone else have any questions? Not. Do members agree to approve the continuing care policy as appended to the report? Thank you. Right, we'll move on to, thanks, Max. We'll move on to community learning and development. This report details the Community Learning and Development Annual Report 2024-25. The annual report highlights the work undertaken by the CLD team and their partners to create resilient, influential and inclusive opportunities within communities. And Ms. Fiona McInnes will speak to the report and answer any questions. Thanks, Fiona.
Hi there.
Have you got your mic on? I can't see you. Oh, you are. Yeah, that's
I
right.
do.
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
shared it.
sharing
Yeah,
one.
that's fine.
So the purpose of the report is obviously to share the work that's been done by the Community Learning and Development section, who have a focus on youth work and capacity building. Obviously, at the last series of the last committee series, you had Morag here from Adult Learning giving her update. Adult learning is the third strand of CLD, although we're based in different sections. So the report aims to highlight the breadth of work undertaken by the Community Learning and Development team. And we start off by introducing the team in case you don't know who we are, and then go on to talk about the key areas that we work in. So providing support to schools in terms of support for transitions, looking at wider achievement agendas, accredited youth work opportunities through particularly through Duke of Edinburgh, which is very well, the uptake in the Western Isles is the numbers are very big. So other things that we do, just as I look around the chamber just now and see how few females there are in the chambers, I'm delighted to say that we had a young person from the Western Isles go down to Edinburgh last weekend to participate in a Women into Politics seminar that happened down at the Scottish Youth, not the, sorry, the Scottish Parliament. And there was representation from all the local authorities at that session. And, you know, it's something that we look to do all the time as we consider the amount of young women who are involved in forums. So pupil forums, area forums in their early years. And then there seems to be a flip when they get to a certain age and they're replaced, it feels, by their male counterparts. So pleased to be participating in that agenda and helping young people understand that they have a voice and should be using it. So other things that we've been involved in, obviously for the work that happens in the Southern Isles, we have lost a very established CLD personnel team member. So Katie Dennehy has moved on from CLD, and my goodness, we already are feeling her absence down in Barra, but we're underway with looking at a replacement for her, and hope that we'll get somebody with as much enthusiasm as Katie provided for us. Obviously, in terms of other agendas, we provide Gaelic support to primary schools in some of the areas across the Western Isles, and that's to support numbers attending local mods, and, you know, keeping the language alive in a community context, which obviously links to what's happening in schools, and again the wider agenda. Young Scot and the Young Scot initiative, in terms of particularly in terms of the travel at the moment, you know, we have a large number of young people with Young Scot cards who are utilising them for travel around Scotland, and we've kind of bridged the gap in terms of finding all the P7 pupils before they transfer to secondary school, and we've got all our young people who want to participating in that scheme. In terms of community development, we are supporting all the area forum developments from the Butt to Barra, and helping communities find their voice, along with obviously their counterparts in their community councils. So just trying to make sure that what we're doing complements what's already in place, and ensuring that ensuring that people feel that they're able to contribute to changes, to developments in their local community. I mean, obviously, you would want to agree, I'm sure, Chair, that it's a very lively report. I'm talking about the document rather than the chat.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a lot of work going on. We
Yeah.
know that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's very key.
So I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Fiona. Does anybody have any questions for Fiona? Right. Okie dokie. There's no questions. Do members agree to note the report? Right. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Hang on. Let me just ask a question. Sorry, I didn't see you there. Sorry.
No, it's not a question. I just I like to put in on record our thanks for Katie Denny for all the hard work through all the years that she delivered on Barra and sometimes in Eust as well. So I just wanted to put that on record. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. Right, so we'll move on to item 14, which is sport, and it's consultation, sport and health savings 2026-27. The reported item 14 relates to the proposed consultation on sport and health savings for 26-27, and as part of the budget setting process for 25-26, the caller approved savings of £75,000 from sports facilities and £15,000 from sports development. However, these were to be funded from Crown Estate funding for 25-26. Mr. Neil MacLeod will speak to the report before I open it up for wider discussion. Okay. Thanks, Neil. Who's got the mic? Do you want to switch your mic off there, please, Fiona? Thanks. Cheers. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, the report is seeking approval to move on to the consultation phase. As you said, at the budget savings, as part of the budget savings exercise for this financial year, there was the 75,000 taken from sports facilities and 15,000 from sports development, predominantly the club sports grants that are provided. Both savings have been delayed for this year through Crown Estate funding that has been provided. The report itself sets out some of the background information to the budget setting itself, which includes financial information that's currently available in 6.1 to 6.4. Also included as appendices to the report are the initial impact assessments that have been undertaken, and they provide more information in terms of the implications of the savings. As part of the agreed savings, the instruction was within that consultation be undertaken on the mitigation of the impact of the closure of pools, and that in effect is the recommendation that is set before the members. And again, happy to take any questions or provide any further explanations if that's required.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Convener, do you want to come in, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. While I knew this report was coming up, it's still disappointing that we're looking at closing the pools at Shawburst and Lionel. I think we're sending out the wrong message to the different communities and to the wider island communities, and also that we're going to cut back the grant funding, to club sport Western Isles for the Lewis Harris and Eust and Barra. I'm conscious of the time. I mean, if everyone came in who wanted to speak on this, we could possibly take an hour. So we've had a lot of people getting in contact with us in the ward about this issue over the past few weeks when the news first broke. So I want to put a proposal forward that we defer this, because that I know there's a group in running Shawburst pool, and also there's been talks with another group to take over the management of the Lionel pool. These talks have been going on for a couple of years. I'm at a loss to understand why nothing has moved on that. We have to be seen to be supporting our rural communities. We're really sending out the wrong message here. We're basically saying we want to discourage people from participating in the likes of swimming, the likes of sport. We heard yesterday from Scottish Council voluntary organisations that 1,000 groups a year are going out of existence because of lack of funding. I think the same could be true for some of the organisations who are members of club sport, Lewis Harris and Euston Barra. We have a lot of people participating in the different sporting organisations in the Western Isles. So I'm proposing we defer this, we look at other options, you know, that Shawbus and Lionel are run by organisations out with the Comhairle. We also defer, you know, the club sport recommendation and the WIGA recommendation to see how we can best fund these organisations rather than what we have in front of us here. If we go out to consultation, which we have to, and the community is going to be 100% behind keeping the Shawbus and Lionel pools open, but the decision will be to close them. So what's the point of a consultation? I know it has to be there's a legal basis, but I'd like to put a proposal forward that we defer this for a year and that we use Crown State funding for 26-27 as well, till we have something in place for the running of Shawbus and Lionel pools, and also how we can increase usage of both areas and both pools. And if you increase usage, you increase revenue.
Okay, thanks, Convener. I just want to bring in the Chief Executive first, and then Neil as well, please. Who's all got the mic on? Do you want to? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just to assist the committee, I mean, it is absolutely important that the committee recognises that this is what is recommended here is a consultation exercise. And yes, the decision has been taken to remove that sum from the budgets. That decision has already been taken. That was taken by this chamber in February. What has been agreed, as you're aware, is to use this year to consult on these very proposals, and no, it should not be presumed that any decision has been reached. It is a consultation. That consultation, I would suggest to you, will of course include discussion with any relevant groups. That is exactly, arguably, the point of this exercise, is to say, can these services, not can we deliver these services in the way that we always have necessarily, but can these services continue to be delivered, including by community groups? But if the decision is not to proceed, then the committee, I think, will have to identify the funding, which has been taken from the budgets in line with the Comhairle's decision in February. So I hope that assists.
Yeah, okay. And as I say, as of the 1st of April, the funding for that has stopped. So if there's going to be a consultation in terms of it and another decision to continue that funding, it'll have to be pretty quick. Okay, so that's maybe for leadership to discuss in terms of how that will come about, rather than me or anybody in this committee. So I want to bring in Ray next, because Ray was next. I've got you all written down, so don't worry, you're not going to get missed out. So Ray's next, please.
Thanks, Chairman. If the convener is bringing forward a motion to that effect, I would certainly second that. But I want to make one or two points with regard to this report. Quite honestly, I feel that more will be lost by the suggestion in terms of both short-term and long-term health benefits. In fact, just making that statement, I wonder what if the health board should be contributing towards this. And anyway, they seem to be putting out quite a lot of money lately, so this would be a very appropriate way to help the community. The report states that the people that will suffer most in these areas will be the young and the older people, because these will obviously are the ones that are hardest to get to Stornoway, as a replacement. There will be a loss of income. A lot of people won't be able to travel to Stornoway. In view of the impact on health. Maybe I'm quite serious about this. Maybe an approach could be made to the health board, either through the communities. I think, I'm not quite so confident as Kenny might be that the communities would be able to take these swim pools on and run them. There's a lot involved, as we know. So it's actually placing a tremendous burden on an organisation. They may be more capable than I personally think of obtaining funds to run them. There's no figures for future costs of decommissioning it. It's mentioned in the report, and you can't just walk away from the swimming pool. Something's got to be done with it. Some money is going to be spent in the future, and I think we're actually going to end up losing more than we're gaining for a number of different aspects. The 7.4 it does give some alternatives, and that seems reasonable enough that we should look at them. I wonder if there should be, as an aside to this, but more importantly, there should be a sports and development MOUG. I think we had one in the past, and I think during COVID it seemed to be put aside for one reason or another. But that's a sort of body that could look at this in depth and really make proper recommendations. Finally, I would say consultation. It says about consulting the communities and all the rest of it. Will the consultations be heeded? Because to my mind, there's nobody going to vote to close the swimming pool. You're going to get 100% not to close the swimming pool. So will we take any notice of that at the end of the day? No, I don't think so.
I mean, at the end of the day,
that's all I want to say. Actually, it's more I could say, but I think from what's been said by Ian Campbell and Neil and so forth, everything is against this, and yet they've got to make a recommendation based on what was said. I don't know, by the budget board or whoever earlier this year. So it's a retrograde step. And I second Kenny on his idea.
Okay, right. Thanks, Ray. Right, so I'll move on to Councillor Norman MacDonald, who's next. Thanks, Nori. Just put your on. Yep, that's you on.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't suppose anybody's going to expect me to come in from any different angle than the views have already been expressed in here. As Chair of WIGA on the story of Cara Hanlon, I think it's self-explanatory, the value of the pool, particularly in Lionel. And the discussions that we're having here, we're talking about this was agreed last February. I don't know if any of us consciously agreed to closing 2 swimming pools. We might have agreed to whatever proposal was buried in the minutiae of all the detail, but I don't think if you canvassed every single member in here just now, you get anybody that would say this is a great idea, let's close 2 pools. It's not. And to say it's been agreed, nothing is set in stone. If we've agreed something that we weren't aware of the consequences of, we can change our minds because that's our prerogative in here. We can change our minds. And I certainly believe that if we were asked just now to change our minds, it would be changed within 5 minutes. I'm passionate about this. I'm also on the chair of sustainable development. We're in the process of trying to arrest depopulation and reverse it, not accelerate it. And we're also in the process of trying to decentralise away from Stornoway. We need to take all of these things into consideration with our own local plan and what it is we're trying to do. Ray points to the health benefits of having pools. I mean, Ray looks like a man who's been swimming all his life. He's in robust health, and he's right. Our own health board should be helping with the provision of what it is we do in our sports centres, not taking away things like the more programs that we had. You know, we need to be working in collaboration with helping every single resident of these Western Isles live longer and keep away from the medical services that the Health Board provide. We don't want people to be accessing medical services. We want them to be living longer and healthier. So, you know, the whole notion of closing these swimming pools, yes, we need to look to see how we can get more people in and to make them more self-sustainable. But if we're to look at every single aspect of the Comhairle budget, we'd be closing every single thing down because there's not a service in this Comhairle that washes its face financially. So we might as well just shut everything down because it's not making money or it's not doing this, that, and next thing, and we'll focus everything back into Stornoway. That's not the way forward. We're talking here about serious impact for very little money. It's almost like we've taken lessons from the Labour government and how to shoot ourselves in the foot. You know, there's no way that this will fly amongst us as a Comhairle or the public out there. It's just not on. I mean, I can't speak more passionately about this than I have, but it's definitely not something we should even be considering. And if we have to reverse the decision that was taken in February, then so be it. Let's just reverse it. End of story. I'm for Kenny's proposal as well. You know, we need to look at other avenues, obviously, and we need to find out what the costs are, probably through the education department, of, you know, how much these pools cost, so that folk are aware who are proposing to help run these facilities, so they know what they're taking on. I'm all for community involvement, community money coming in. If at the end of the day we need to rebrand things and get investment from whoever it is, I don't care if it's called the Northland Power Community Swimming Pool or the Magnora or whoever it is, or the Scottish and Southern Electricity, this, that, or the next thing. We need to explore all these avenues, but we certainly, at the last resort, we should never be thinking about closing community facilities that are so important out with Stornoway.
Okay, I'll just quickly bring in Councillor Donald Brighton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. First of all, I'd like to remind Mr MacDonald he's not Chair of Sustainable Development. He might be by the end of the day, but
he did, yeah.
I have great sympathy for.
I'm gonna let Donald talk.
I have great sympathy for the views that have been expressed. I don't think we can start unravelling a budget that we set already in February. I think, as the community said, I'm at a loss as to why the consultation and engagement with the community didn't start immediately. And I think, as has been alluded by Mr MacDonald, there should be engagement with the community land trusts and with those who have already expressed interest in running these pools. I think that engagement should start now. And if it takes longer than expected, and not to preempt the next budget cycle, but we can use county state money for the next budget year to ensure that there is enough time for us to find people who are interested in taking over the facilities and running them. But I think I would be cautious about us revisiting and unravelling budget decisions that have already been taken.
Yeah.
But I think we should immediately engage with those who are interested in taking over the facilities and making sure to stay open.
Okay, thanks, Don. I'll just quickly bring in the leader as well before I move on with yourself, Kenny.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Crichton made a lot of the points I was going to make. I don't think legally we can change the decision of the budget for another year anyway. So I think the recommendation before us to go and consult is a good one. I think we need to have the information to our fingertips as to what we're going to do, what the next stages are. I just wonder, is there maybe a stage before the consultation where there is engagement with the groups who probably expressed interest, and that might shape the consultation going forward? We might not need to do it. It might be that they're willing to take it on. So I just wonder, is that something we can add in rather than going to the state of the consultation?
Yeah, we can add that in. Yeah, that's fine. I just want to point out that one of the groups has already been consultation and it has proved not to be satisfactory. So I would just like to mention that. It's not like there's been no consultation, and the reason the consultation was held back was because obviously, as a democratic decision, it's this decision that this committee that has to make that decision, and so it has to be ratified by that decision. That's why it wasn't started immediately. So I'd just like to make those points. Right.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish just the last. I thought you were going to say it, but if the decision is to be reviewed, it would be at the budget setting next year.
It would be at the budget setting next year. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Right. I'll bring in Councillor Kenny MacLeod from Harris.
Thanks very much, Chair.
I have to say, when I read this report, I went through it a couple of times because I couldn't believe that the main option we went for was closure, when the greater saving is from actually reducing the opening in across the Western Isles and reducing a wee bit of the pain, or sharing the pain across the islands, rather than two communities losing completely. If we're looking at 7.2 closure will give a net saving of 49,655, but in 7.4 reducing by 1 hour the opening of all 4 facilities will make a saving of 54,352, an annual saving. So I can understand why closure is a recommendation when there's a better saving by just reducing the opening time in each of the 4 facilities. If we have to make a saving, then, as I say, we are the West Isles community and we need to share the burden and share the pain. But closure should be the very, very last resort for anything, because once you close it, the chance that we get reopen again, the point's already been made. The health board should be contributing significantly to this, to these things. They have been contributing to other sporting and leisure facilities in the community. They should also be supporting these, because the points have been made, the huge impact that these 2 facilities are making and the large number of people that will benefit from keeping them open. So I can't see why, and I don't see how, as a council trying to provide for our communities, we should be proposing closure as a first option.
Okay, right. Thanks, Kenny. Do you want to bring it coming again, convener?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Neil. You come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, yes, just to a point of order more than anything else in terms of the consultation. It's following on from the recommendation from the councillors yourselves that that's what we were to consult on, the full closure and repurposing of the rural pools. Again, should members request that consultation to be widened, then obviously that's something for you to do. But it's just to point out that in order for us to make a recommendation, we can't make a recommendation that goes against what you've already voted through. So, but as I say, that's entirely in your own hands how you wish to proceed with that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, do you just want to come in? Who's got the lights on? Angus, do you want to switch off your light, please? Yeah, I've got a list of everybody who's going to speak anyway. But still won't come on. Kenneth, you have to wait. Right now, come in now, Andy. I know I've got you next. I know you're on the list. I've got a list here of everybody. So just carry on. No, the chief executive.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mr. MacLeod to my right makes an important point. This is a consultation which the service is obliged to undertake in terms of a decision of the Comhairle, but this does not close the door on consideration of other options, or indeed, of course, of consideration of the whole budget line at the next budget round in February. So if the consultation were to go ahead, that information on whether or not community groups wish to can be involved in the running of these pools will be available to the Comhairle, and it can then consider what it wants to do as regards further consultation or removing these budget lines altogether. But the decision in February, which we're obliged to follow, is to consult on these specific proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Right, I'll just bring in Kenneth now, because Kenneth's been waiting quite a while. So put the mic on, Kenneth, please. Okay, thanks.
Thankfully, I shouldn't have too much to take because it was covered by most of the other folk. It was just to sort of strengthen and back up the idea of speaking to the health service to maybe back this up. Last week, the National Record of Scotland published their annual, depressing, suicide rates, and unfortunately, not for the first time, we are at the top by a country mile. So it just seems daft that we're not working hand in hand with the health board on this. And in particular, I think it was Ray that mentioned how this is going to primarily affect young and old. Well, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, suicide rates among the young in the islands in particular is disgustingly high. And I really think we should, you know, as a point of action, go straight to the health board with this to say, look, can you help with this? Because closing 2 pools is, yeah, it's just not going to go down well. That was all. Cheers.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot, Kenneth. So Angus McCormack is councillors next. Okay.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I think the first thing that we all have to remember is that we took this decision in February. We had all the facts in front of us then, and we took the decision. It wasn't a good decision then, and there's a whole host of other decisions that we took in February which I didn't like very much, but we took them nonetheless. And now we're at the stage where we have realised that this is really not a very good idea at all. And I said that myself at the last series of meetings. How to resolve it, however, is the question. What is the best way about doing that? And because it's a budgetary matter, the budgetary element of it cannot, as the leader has already said, be amended until the next budget. However, this opportunity to consult on this matter, if we widen the consultation wide enough, and that's the point that I think that Neil and the Chief Executive have been making, if we widen the consultation sufficiently, then we can approach all of the avenues that people have mentioned in the course of this debate, like talking to the Western Isles Health Board and talking to developers who are coming our way in the future, and perhaps even talking to the national government to see if some element of support could come to allow us to retain these pools. I think consultation is really the best way to go forward. And I'm not sure that technically we can do what the convener is suggesting, given that this is a budgetary matter. Because if we were to defer, we'd have to find, I presume, this sum of money from somewhere else to plug the gap. And I don't think that's something that we can do. So I'd like to suggest that what we do is we go with the recommendations and ensure that the consultation exercise is as wide as it can possibly be in order that we can come up with a satisfactory solution.
Okay, thanks, Angus. I mean, for myself, I mean, I agree with Angus. I think we need to go ahead with this in terms of the consultation. We widen the consultation, and everyone here, it's pretty obvious that everyone's against this closure. So then let's find alternatives, you know, but you've got to come up with alternatives. You know, at the end of the day, that money has to be saved for next term, for the next budgetary term. So that money's saved, money's taken from somewhere else. So you need to step up and make some hard decisions here. So that's fine. I'm quite happy to do that, take the consultation forward and widen it as far as we can, as much as possible, every opportunity and every chance that we can find an alternative source. But we'll need to act very, very fast. Okay, so let me just bring in Donald here first.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a brief point and taking cognizance of everything that's already been said in the debate today. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the Chamber paragraphs 8.1 and 8.2 in Mr MacLeod's report, and to provide clarity today to officers who intended to take this forward about the scope of consultation. At 8.2, it makes a suggestion about other things that could be included in that consultation. We have also had other suggestions from the Chamber today. So my only ask in terms of our own service is that clarity is provided today in conclusion of this matter as to the scope of consultation. So we're clear exactly from the Chamber on what it wishes us to include in the scope of the consultation.
Okay, thanks. Can I just bring in Francis Murray, Councillor Francis Murray, who
Thank you very much, Chair. I think one thing that I would say is really incumbent on all of us from this exercise today, this discussion, is that when these suggestions come in the February, we need to read them and read them very carefully, because I actually went back, but I remembered the bit about the opening hours having been in the budget report, because as a frequent swimmer, that would affect me, and I suppose we're all selfish and we do look at things that affect ourselves. And I hadn't really, I thought had we discussed this before, and I went back and I read it, and this was all here, the closure of Shawbust and Lionel. So I think it's really important that A, we all read these things and we're aware of them when they're discussed in the February, and B, if in a situation like this, when something is deferred by Crown Estate funding, we don't leave it until it's too late. I appreciate the explanation, but that we start the process really quickly, because the year comes round before you know it, and we only had that year's grace on the back of Crown Estate, and you know, maybe we needed to keep our focus on it, because while you know, obviously nobody wants to see community facilities closed in one part of the island, if the alternative is that everybody in all the other parts of the island are going to lose hours and maybe don't have an alternative pool to go to, certainly don't in Barra or Leonardclitch, we have to be cognizant of the whole picture.
It's one of the things we considered, yeah, absolutely. Councillor Ian Macaulay, please.
Thanks, Chair. Still not a member of the committee, surprise. Even practically everything has been saying tonight today. With regard to finding alternatives, I think it's quite important, if we are looking for alternatives for this or for anything else, we shouldn't keep on going to the Crown Estate funds as an scapegoat, and we're just basically kicking it into the long grass. We're going to give this problem to somebody here next year, the next section of councillors that come in. But by keep on saying, no, we just use the Crown Estate, I don't think that is a viable source of anything anymore. But I do think we should be looking for alternatives, as everybody was saying. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Right, so decision time. What I'm going to do, what I want to do is, obviously I want members to approve the recommendations at 3.1, but with a view to having a much wider scope in terms of the consultation. Really, that's what this is about. It's consulting, and if the will, obviously the will of the chamber is that we don't do this in terms of closing the pools. And that's fine. I'm happy with that. For my own sakes, without the use of swimming pools, I never would have done the Minch swim. So I know how importantly, and I've used a Shawbust pool quite regularly in the past when my children were very small. We used to take them there very regularly. So, Councillor Norrin, don't.
Yeah, just further to your own proposal here just now, Chair. Can I ask the Education Department provide accurate figures for the running costs of the pools, you know, to do with chemicals, chlorine, staffing, etc., etc. I don't know if that's accurately being provided. I would like to hope that it is, so people are aware of what it is that they will be taking on in terms of the running costs of the facilities.
Yeah, absolutely. These costs, when we were looking at the proposals back in February, these costs were intended to be included. Was looking at total running costs. It is a challenge in terms of both Lionel School and Shawbust School with the pools, because the pool plant is integral to the total plant of the school. So it can be a bit difficult to totally disaggregate the costs just specifically to the running of the pool. But everything that is set, pool cost, staffing, and any definable costs that are specifically for the pool can definitely be set out. But there has to be a degree of estimation in what the energy costs and so on of the addition of the pool operation to the total school running costs is made. But ultimately, yes.
Okay, right. Okie dokie. So based on that, based on increasing the scope of the consultation, do members agree to approve the recommendation at 3.1? Okay, right. We're now at 27 minutes past 1, and we're going to have to adjourn and move. Oh, Ray, sorry.
Sorry,
just a quick comment, very quick.
Yeah, it's just a request.
Yeah.
Could we introduce a MOG for sport and health? That might help in the future.
Is that all right, Dawn? MOG?
We need a specific report now. We can.
To request it.
We can report back the next series.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Right. So based on that, we're going to have to adjourn this meeting because Don's coming on next at 2 o'clock, and he's He's got a presentation, so we've run out of time. So we're looking at alternatives to reconvene this meeting. So the alternatives are, Derek?
Yeah, the two alternatives are later this afternoon at the rising of companies in the Gaelic, although I'm conscious there's membership formal, or tomorrow at the rising of policy and resources. There is nothing after policy and resources.
Okay.
After PNR?
After PNR? Okie dokie. Right. Okay. Thanks for your attendance, and we'll see you tomorrow.